out anyway.
Do you want to share your screen, Robin?
Not yet. Okay, it's telling me it's setting up the webinar to do this on YouTube. Okay. So it's going right now. For folks who are watching this webinar, we're just going to get a little bit organized, and we'll probably get started in about 4 minutes.
Push this. No, it's an individual one. He's on. We'll send a note in the chat and ask them to send you a link.
Is he on his way, Anna, do you think?
Okay, Robin, it's Monique.
Hi,
Can
Monique.
you hear me? Hi.
Yes.
Maddie needs a link to this. Sorry.
Okay. As a panelist?
Yes.
Okay.
It was just going to be the two of us from staff.
Okay.
Hello.
That's amazing. Let me tell you, you have something that a lot of staff want to be on. It's a giant Zoom call with Indivisible.
Okay, I believe I've just sent Maddie over email the link to get in. So Anna, I think what we should do is just go ahead and start the webinar at 6. And if the AG is a little bit late, that's okay. We'll just, when he gets here, he can join us. Does that sound right?
I defer to you. It's okay. I mean, I know that he'll be here, so.
Yeah. I'm sure he's probably, on his way.
And I'll give him time. If he gets in late, I'll give him time, whatever it works. I'm not, I'm a team player.
Okay, that's super. All right, then what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share my screen. Okay, you guys see the Indivisible slide, right? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're good, Robin.
Okay, I'm going to officially start our webinar, okay, everyone?
Yep.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much tonight for joining us. My name is Robin, and I'm the facilitator for Indivisible Colorado. I want to share that we have had record turnout for the folks on this who wanted to join the call tonight. We had 5,000 folks who registered for this. And so if you are watching this directly from the Mobilize link, you're one of the lucky first 1,000 participants that came. After we reach our 1,000, then we're moving to live stream. You don't have to do anything. You're already on this call, but I just wanted to share that so that you know that we just had incredible turnout tonight for this call. So let me just share what we're going to do tonight. First of all, if you don't know about us, Indivisible Colorado is the statewide team that exists to share communications statewide and to support the work of local Indivisible groups. So I hope that many of you are in a local Indivisible group. And if you're not, then we'd love to get you connected. So definitely reach out. So tonight, I want to share we are recording this call, and we will email the link to the recording to everyone who registered for this call. So don't worry if you see something that you missed. We're going to send this to you after the call. We're going to start with some pre-submitted questions. What we did is, you can imagine having 5,000 folks that registered for this call. We got a ton of questions. We tried to bucket them into general categories, and those pre-submitted questions, we're going to have our team members Tally and Christine ask those questions of Senator Hickenlooper and of Attorney General Weiser. And so we'll start with that. But then, throughout the presentation, we invite you to put additional questions into the question and answer box. And what we'll do is throughout the presentation, I'll pick a couple of those questions just to mix it up a little. And just please know that even if we didn't get your question answered tonight, we really are trying to capture the spirit of all these questions. And we will send these questions to both Senator Hickenlooper and Attorney General Weiser after the call so they know what your concerns are. So that's all I have to say at this point. Shay, let me just make sure you're on the line. Are you with us, Shay?
I am here.
Okay, super. Yeah, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
All right. So hi, Colorado. It's great to be here with you all tonight. If you don't know, I am Shay Bird. I am the National Senior Regional Organizer over Colorado, Nevada, and Southern California. And I'm so excited to be here with you all tonight. Really quick, before we jump into everything, because you're not here for me, I just want to mention that this month, our big action here at National Indivisible is that we push our members of Congress to do town halls during the March recess. So we want to thank Senator Hickenlooper for initiating this town hall with us to kick off March. And we also are planning a Blue State convenings, and I will drop the toolkit for the March recess and the Blue State convening toolkit in the chat now. And if you are interested in joining that planning committee, please reach out to me at shay@indivisible.org. I would love to get about 10 people on this planning committee so that we can all come together as indivisibles, and new indivisibles, old indivisibles alike can come share knowledge and move forward and plan out how we are going to use our Blue State trifecta to combat what is going on in DC with the Trump administration. So without further ado, I will wrap up and pass it off to Tally because this is what you all are here for. So thank you. Bye.
And Christine is joining me as a moderator here tonight to ask questions with Senator Hickenlooper. Can we get there? Hi, Christine. There we go. All right.
My video doesn't seem to be on. Not sure what's going on.
Oh, okay. We'll get that fixed. Attorney General Weiser.
Try now.
I'm not sure why it's not happy.
Let's see. What I did is I made it.
There we are.
Oh, there you are. Okay,
I think
good.
we're in business. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks. Good.
Okay. We're all here. Yay. All right. I'm Tally Magoon, and I'm here with Christine Betts and with Indivisible. And welcome, Senator Hickenlooper and Attorney General Weiser. We're really excited to have you this evening. I would like to first say to both of you, thank you for being here, but also for the actions that you've taken to resist and block the Trump agenda. We know you are fighting an uphill battle, and we appreciate you using every strategy possible to stop the total breakdown of our country. And sometimes it feels like that's exactly what's happening. To begin, we invite both of you to share an opening statement, opening thoughts, things you want to share that are happening in your neck of the woods and in Washington and the state of Colorado. I'd like to start with Senator Hickenlooper.
Great. Thank you, Tally. And thank you, Robin and Christine and everyone on Indivisible. It means a lot to know that you're all out there and all the work you're doing. Thanks for being on this call. Phil Weiser, thank you as well. Let me start by saying how deeply I feel the anger and frustration that I think everyone feels. We got punched in the gut. I mean, beyond that pain, it just was almost for a week there. It was almost debilitating. Never in my life has somebody posed so much danger and done so much damage. And I think, looking at what President Trump has done, he's in one thing after another. He's made huge cuts to Medicaid, to finance tax cuts for billionaires. He really set Elon Musk loose to do, a reckless firing spree that impacts people's daily lives, but affects Coloradans in every way. He's in the process of laying off 80,000 VA, Veterans Administration employees. That's going to be harmful, not just to the people getting laid off, but all the veterans that have put their lives on the line for our country. He disgraced our nation. I mean, disgraced our country like I've never seen before in my life. When he shunned our allies and cuddled up to one of our worst enemies on earth, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. This stuff is unthinkable, and I get, I try to keep, I try to keep control, but we are fighting back everywhere we can. Senate Democrats have been slowing down every vote. I know it doesn't always look like it. We're clogging up the floor best we can. We've got about 2,000, maybe almost 3,000 lawyers sometimes who are trying to find a way to investigate and prosecute every place, or litigate every place where the law has been broken. We've also planted dozens and dozens, probably close to 50 or 100 whistleblowers, because we need stories. We need to find out all these places where he's breaking the law and doing something that is quite possibly, in many cases, clearly illegal. We got to fight back on that, every single place. We're also, for the first time, working with influencers to try and master social media. It sounds ridiculous, but those of you who know Chuck Schumer and some of the longtime senators, this is not something that they're nimble with. But Cory Booker's been doing a great job, and we have influencers coming in, 22-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 26-year-olds, who have 2 or 4 or 8 million followers, and they're training us. It sounds kind of silly, but they're training us, because the Republicans are gambling that this all-out assault is going to cripple us and force us to fight against each other. They are trying to keep the media so occupied, and of course, the media now doesn't get paid for selling ads. They get paid only for attention. So if the public won't come and watch, then they won't cover it. So we're trying to figure out and adjust to that. We recognize that where we have real power is when we're united. And I think it's fair to say that nobody does a better job of uniting people than Indivisible. And I know many of you have been to our office. We've been receiving thousands of calls and emails every week. This is how we're going to win. And especially with so many Republicans, House members who are vulnerable. They right now have only a 1-vote margin. But even when everyone comes back, they'll have a 3-vote margin. And when they find out the damage being done to veterans and everyone else, I think we have some real advantages. Some of these Republicans are going to flip. So I won't get into specifics now, but once again, we can't win this without all of you. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for all your work.
Yes, thank you, Senator Hickenlooper. Attorney General Weiser, would you like to provide opening remarks?
I sure would. I want to talk about who we are as a nation. Then I want to talk about the rule of law. Then I want to talk about our democracy as a team sport. First, who we are. E pluribus unum. Out of many, we are one. The diversity of our nation is a strength. Our ability to be inclusive, welcoming people, regardless of where they come from, who they love, who they worship or don't worship, that's what America's about. We treat each other as fellow citizens in a nation that George Washington once said, where bigotry has no sanction. What's sad about this moment is how much hating, how much divisiveness we are seeing from an administration on a scale we've never seen before, whether it's against transgender individuals, people based on immigration, where they come from, religion. This is not sustainable. This cannot be allowed to stand. I want to contrast this, by the way, with the spirit of our great senator, former Governor John Hickenlooper, who never met a stranger. And that's something that we in Colorado need to hold on to. How we make a difference in this moment includes how we all show up. Do not let people make you afraid, divide you against others. We are indivisible, and we are committed to liberty and justice for all of us. I'm fighting that battle in the courts on a number of fronts. There's an effort to take away people's status as citizens by virtue of their birth. The 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which overturns a dreadful decision, Dred Scott, says if you're born here, you're a citizen. And the idea that a president could undermine that with an executive order is antithetical to our Constitution, which says the Constitution is the highest law in the land, and a president's executive order can't overturn it. We went to court, and a judge said in that case it was the most unconstitutional thing he'd ever seen. I've had to bring 5 cases so far. All of them we've gotten preliminary relief because all of them aren't close cases. These actions are illegal, and we're challenging them as such. That gets to my second point. We either preserve the law as a nation, and we have the rule of law, where people are treated fairly under the rule of law, or if we lose the rule of law, we lose everything. So Congress passes the laws. Senator Hickenlooper has worked on critical laws like the Inflation Reduction Act or the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. And these laws call for mandate spending. Other authorizations mandate spending for veterans, for people who get Meals on Wheels, for victims of domestic violence. This administration has said they can unilaterally cut spending that has been mandated by Congress. That is a clear violation of the law and the Constitution. We went to court and we won on that issue as well. I want people to understand the logical extension of the argument being made by this administration. If they say they can unilaterally decide what spending actually happens, and they can second guess Congress, they can say we're sending out Social Security checks to certain states, but not to other states, or to certain people and not to other people. And yes, as Senator Hickenlooper said, they're threatening Social Security by another way, which is they're cutting the key workers that are necessary to keep Social Security afloat. So we're defending the rule of law. And my point is, I'll put this in the chat. If we lose the rule of law, we lose everything. And I am going to fight hard for the rule of law. And that's why we're bringing these cases. It's not because I think it's fun to bring cases. It's not because we have extra time on our hands. We don't. We are strapped in our office, but it's too important. With other state AG colleagues, we are going to continue to be on the case. We're very collaborative. I'm going to put in the chat a link for everybody. There are upcoming hearings. The first one's tonight in Arizona with 3 of my colleagues. April 16th in Colorado, we're going to hold a hearing. I'm bringing 2 of my colleagues, Nick Brown from Washington, Aaron Ford from Nevada, to join us so we can hear directly from people here in Colorado. I'll be joining other Indivisible meetings all the way from Durango to Central Park here in Denver and many other places. I'm a big believer. Democracy is a team sport. And that's my final note. Senator Hickenlooper said it well. You all showing up, engaging, make a real difference. We're going to make sure we tell you all about the opportunity to engage in our office at this event. Otherwise, you're going to see and hear things that we need to hear. We got to hang in this work together. We in Colorado can and will be a beacon. We're going to get through this as a nation, and there will be a chance for us to repair and renew our nation after what is a very dark chapter. Thank you all for staying in this work.
All right. Thank you, Senator and Attorney General. Very clearly, we are all on the same page because you just answered my first question, which is wonderful. It really does have to do with how angry people are and marching and calling and saying we need to change this. Everybody's scared and we're all very worried. And I'm very happy to hear that you have ideas about what you're doing and lawsuits that are being filed. Senator Hickenlooper, given that though, I'm wondering, is there anything else specifically that you are doing in the Senate to fight for your constituents going forward? Is there anything else that we need to know about that you're working on to oppose the current efforts to dismantle the rule of law, as Attorney General Weiser just said?
Well, and Phil did say it so well. I mean, if we lose the rule of law, we lose everything. That's why we're going to litigate that's why what he's doing with kind of unifying and creating teams of attorneys general is such a powerful tool. We're trying to disrupt business as usual every way we can. Obviously, I mentioned that we slow down nominations, we hold up votes, we're sending letters to the administration. We speak on the Senate floor. We did an all-night filibuster to protest when Vogt was being nominated to be the head of the budget office. I mean, every one of these things tries to have a point to it, and we're learning to post these on social media, to repost each other's posts. This is a lot of what the young big influencers are showing us. We're also trying to drive home the human impact of all these harmful actions and build pressure on the Republicans. And I spent a fair amount of time talking to the most moderate Republican senators and asking them, what do you think about Ukraine and Putin? And how do you feel about the president of the United States reaching out and ignoring our allies and actually disrespecting them and trying to be best buddies with a fierce, corrupt dictator? And again, they don't like it. They're in a rock and a hard place. This is the first time in history that I've never seen anything even similar in history, where you have, one of the wealthiest guy in the country, in the world, who's threatening each senator. If they don't vote to support Trump's nomination, he will make sure that Republican senator faces a primary with $50 million behind it. I mean, it basically will take out whoever that is. And so each one of them is trying to figure out, I'm not going to win this vote anyway. Is it worth losing my career? Can I do more inside the Senate? And I think that's I mean, I'm not defending a lot of these Republicans. I think they should have stood up. But it is the first time we've ever seen that kind of threat and that kind of coercion. We held the floor one night all night long to really protest the ridiculous budget proposal, which would have cut critical services for things that Coloradans rely on. And all these cuts are so they can give a massive tax cut, a huge tax break, for the majority of which goes to the ultra wealthy, the richest people in our country. The whole thing's frustrating. Anyway, we try to take all that information and get it out there. Transparency is the enemy of tyranny. This is a form of tyranny, and I think the more people hear what the Republicans are actually doing, what the consequences are, the more people will rise up. And again, that's a big part of the power that Indivisible has.
Thank you, Senator Hickenlooper. Attorney General, is there anything that you'd like to add about the legality of Musk's action or what you are specifically doing to fight for Colorado?
Yes, we took him and the Doge operation to court and we won. The point that people need to know is that government has to operate in a way that, let's call it, colors in the lines. And I'm all for performance improvement in government, but I'm not for people's private data that's sensitive, like your social security number, your bank accounts, being accessed on servers by individuals who you don't know who they are, haven't been screened, haven't been trained, and the information can end up on the dark web. That's reckless and irresponsible. It goes against all the government's regulations. We took them to court on that and we won. This effort is being done in a way that is reckless, and I want to double down on what the senator talked about, the cuts on government spending, which are either inspired by or guided by Doge, that also represent reckless conduct. I mentioned the unilateral cuts before. Here's another one. They said, oh, we're going to save money on NIH funding. I'm not sure whose bright idea this was. They said, we'll do it over the weekend with no notice to anybody, no chance for anyone to give us any feedback, and no explanation for why we're making this change that goes against a prior act of Congress. CU Boulder, CU Anschutz, CSU would lose $90 million in critical medical research that is saving lives. We went to court on that, and we just today got a preliminary injunction that is stopping this from taking effect because it's illegal, it's wrong, and it's harmful.
Okay, thank you, Attorney General Weiser. this actually leads straight into a very similar question for Senator Hickenlooper, which is, we are aware that the Senate has passed their budget resolution bill. And we do know that this is really a moving target, the budget, but we're aware that the Senate has passed their budget resolution bill and the House has just passed their version. We want to thank you, as you just mentioned, for your advocacy and your all-night effort to propose amendments that would preserve programs targeted for cuts and elimination. The Republicans would like to renew the $4.5 trillion tax cut for wealthy donors and corporations by putting it on the backs of working people. This will explode the debt, adding an increase to the debt ceiling to the tune of $4 trillion, is what's being reported right now. Senator, what is the Senate's plan to protect citizens and taxpayers from this greed? And can we use the debt ceiling to bring Republicans to the table?
Well, excuse me. I mean, right now they're putting together a 30-day, or hopefully we'll see, a 30-day continuing resolution that will hash out some of the budget things. But I think, again, transparency is power. And looking at the House budget, which had, somewhere close 860 to $880 billion they're going to cut from Medicaid. Now, at some point, someone's going to tell the Republicans that a full 60% of the people in nursing homes are on Medicaid. 60%. So if you imagine how many working people, how many middle-class people have a grandmother or a grandfather, a parent in a nursing home, are going to get kicked out, or they're going to be forced into bankruptcy. Those kind of facts are the ones that we're driving home. The cut to veterans. I mean, Biden had a real emphasis on trying to hire more veterans in every agency. So when DOGE goes in and is, cutting the probationary employees, all of those probationary employees, not all of them, but 40%, 45, 50% are veterans. So we're knocking down the people that put their lives on the line. I had a guest, actually she couldn't, the United Airlines, they had to cancel the flight. So she didn't get to the State of the Union address last night, but she was going to fly in, and she was a naval combat officer, fought for 2.5 years in combat, was hurt, got a 100% disability, was honorably discharged, and she got her dream job and moved out to Colorado to work for the Forest Service. And then suddenly 9 months later, she's moved out here. She has no savings, and all of a sudden she's laid off. That's insane. This woman gave such a big part of her life, and she'll have this disability for the rest of her life. And she suddenly is of no use to the government. I go down one list after another. And as people hear this, and again, I remember what Indivisible helped do to Cory Gardner, where he couldn't show his face in Colorado without having to answer hard questions on the Affordable Care Act and some of the other ridiculous things that Republicans were doing back then. This is the same kind of situation where, millions of people are going to lose their health care. So a relatively small number of ultra-rich, the billionaires, get their tax cuts. And I think a lot of them don't even care about the tax cuts. It's almost like a cult. But it's one of the most frustrating things in the world. Now the tax cut, if you look at who gets it, the 1% highest people in the tax bracket, the average person gets $62,000. In the below 50%, the average person gets $400. So I mean, the whole thing is skewed completely towards the wealthy. They include everybody so they can say it's a tax cut for everyone, but it really is a scam just to help pay for this. It's all these savings are a scam just to pay for this giant tax cut.
Thank you, Senator Hickenlooper. Attorney General, we already discussed DOGE, but I know that you also mentioned the National Institute of Health. You recently filed a brief urging the Supreme Court to uphold a key provision of the Affordable Care Act. Could you please discuss that and what it would mean for Coloradans' healthcare?
I will say the attacks on the Affordable Care Act continue to shock me, and it is painful and wrong that so many attacks are happening. Before I get to this point, I wanted to actually do a related point because it's come up so much in the chat that it's probably worth knowing, which is how do we know that the Trump administration is going to actually follow court orders. So this is something that I want to just get to before I answer the question, because it's obviously so critical. The good news thus far, and I'll call it mildly encouraging, is at the district court level, when we're getting these orders about keeping funding channels open, keeping the DOJ people away from the Treasury Department's sensitive database, they are indicating they're complying with the law. They're not saying we're not following the law. Ultimately, we can talk more about what the Supreme Court's going to do. We can talk about what if they don't follow the law, but I just want people to know currently there's some cause for mild encouragement. Second, if you have an official not follow the law, say the Treasury Department says, we're going to keep giving these DOJ folks people's social security numbers, at that point, the official is risking being in contempt of court and having to rack up civil fines, and if they're a lawyer, even lose their bar license. And that's going to be costly for people. Look at what's happened to Rudy Giuliani. So I know people are concerned whether the rule of law will hold. So am I. I'm going to do all we can to keep the rule of law in place to ensure court orders are followed. And again, a recent hearing where one of the, I think, deputy attorney generals asked, will you follow court orders? Thankfully, to Senator Hickenlooper's point about some more moderate members, one of his colleagues said, don't you dare not follow court order. We've got to hold the line on that as a nation. I, as an attorney general, use all the tools I can to ensure court orders are enforced. Ultimately, apropos of this Zoom, we, the people, need to be heard on this. That is not a line we can cross. All right, as for your question, the Affordable Care Act has a key provision that guarantees access to preventative health care. This is important because it ensures that people can get cancer screenings and they're not going to have additional costs or prevented. This has been a big issue in the past where preventive health care wasn't covered, whether for heart disease or cancer screening. This part of the Affordable Care Act mandates that all insurance providers offer preventive health care. I joined with my Democratic AG colleagues at the Supreme Court to defend this provision. This is one of a series of attacks on the Affordable Care Act. As Senator Hickenlooper noted, they continue to attack this law, which the public supports strongly. We're going to keep defending this law in the court of law and the court of public opinion. Thank you, and appreciate the chance to deal with that other issue, but I saw it keep coming up.
Thank you for catching that. Senator Hickenlooper, the Republicans have a very narrow majority in the Senate. This means that there needs to be a defection of only 3 Republican senators to stop destructive laws from passing and social safety nets such as Medicaid from being cut. Everything about the Trump agenda has the significant potential of hurting citizens across the country who rely on these supports. Have you had a conversation with any of the Republican senators whose constituents rely heavily on government help, who are willing to stand up to the dismantling of our government services? And what are your plans for leveraging their votes to protect these popular programs and social safety nets? I know you've addressed this a little bit, but if you could give us a little bit more information, that would be great.
I'm going to guess there's nobody on this Zoom that's got their tie on. So if it's okay, I'm going to get a little more casual. It's been a long day. See Phil there without a tie on, so it's justice. I spent a lot of my
Colorado, time. John, virtually speaking.
Yeah. I spend a lot of my time in the Senate when I'm in the floor, but just even in the office buildings, reaching out to the moderate Republicans and trying to build relationships, because ultimately, you're right, they've only got 53. Now, since the vice president gets to break a tie, that means we need to find 4. But Murkowski has already shown that she's had enough of Trump. Susan Collins is pretty right there. And Mitch McConnell really doesn't like him. I mean, again, he's a very conservative Republican, but things like the rule of law and taking things away, critical services from veterans, Mitch McConnell goes nuts. So we're really, in many of these issues, we're down to 1. And there are a bunch, I'm not going to name them here just because that gets him into more trouble. But by a bunch, I mean there's a dozen senators that know that these are things that make them very uncomfortable. Not only that, they repulse them. I mean, they're very conservative people, but they're not animals. They're not beasts. They don't think that we should pull the safety net away from everybody. So I continue to do that. The nominations, again, as I mentioned before, never before in history we had someone offering a $50 million primary to anybody who opposes the president, basically telling whoever opposes the president they're going to get a $50 million primary opponent. It's inconceivable. But we've gone through much of the nominations. There are going to be a bunch of other bills now. Once we get through this flood of kind of the early craziness when they're trying to just flood the zone, and keep in mind, almost every person who's nominated for Trump's cabinet, they've got their own TV show on Fox. They're big time influencers. These are all telegenic, very powerful people that are meant to grab the news cameras and hold the, get every news cycle that they can dominate, no matter what Democrats say or what we've got. So we Democrats are going to have to get more performative, a little more, dancing. And I'm just, that's a bad joke. But anybody who's seen me dance would know that's a really bad joke. But we have to find other ways to turn up the pressure on my Republican colleagues and drive home how budget cuts, what they do to Medicaid and Medicare, Social Security. I mean, they're laying off all these people that manage Social Security and Medicare. All of a sudden, checks aren't going to come. You wonder whether they're not trying, and this sounds crazy, but I tell you that they're trying to make government fail so they can declare martial law, declare they've got to take over. I mean, some of these people are pretty crazy. And I guess, we've introduced, that one night we introduced 20 amendments, and we're voting pretty much all night to try and pressure the Republicans to remove some of the most harmful provisions in their budget resolution. They wouldn't budge. But I think as we go forward, we're going to have a better approach. And one thing, I guess, on this call, I'd like to posit, because I've been thinking a lot about this, about having a broader set of values that we stand for, and realize that we're going to disagree with each other a little bit, because I want to get back to the point where, 10 years ago, we could have a Democratic senator from Indiana or from Kansas or Missouri. And that's considered impossible now. And I don't think it should take that much. I think most people in America share our basic values. And I think we have to kind of figure out how to present those values in a slightly broader way without ever compromising our support for people's civil rights or personal freedoms. I'm not suggesting that. I recognize we're always going to be the party that supports the last and the least, and tries to make sure everyone gets as fair a shake as they can. But I would love to get a senator from Indiana or Missouri. Otherwise, we're always going to be fighting on such a steep uphill battle. And what we're doing, we're in the right. Our voyage should be much more level and shouldn't always be uphill.
Thank you, Senator Hickenlooper. Yes, along those lines, Attorney. Oh,
never. I'm sorry, I was on mute, and I was just going to follow up really quickly, Christina, if that's okay.
Sure.
Very quickly, I'm sorry for that. Very quickly, Senator, one of the things that stands out to us is that a lot of the very conservative southern red states take a lot of get a lot of benefit from these programs. And it's sort of ironic that they are voting against them, or they are in that position. And can you address that really briefly, that we have states that voted for Trump who also are looking to lose a lot of funding for the people in their states?
No, you're exactly right. And that is one of those things it's confounding. The Inflation Reduction Act, and I recognize the oil and gas companies have done a great job of convincing a lot of people that climate change isn't that big a deal. But put that aside, the Inflation Reduction Act provided 70% of the tax credits and benefits that go to utility companies, go to solar, go to wind, go to electric vehicles. 70% went to red states as it was being allocated. And yet they are, to a person, voting against it. This is another place where I think Indivisible can play a role. Even in red states, they have swing districts. So maybe there's a Republican in that district now. Let's get them. Let's get in front of them and point out, my God, you're taking money out of the pockets of people that live in Mississippi or Louisiana. You're taking money out of the pockets of people from Arkansas and Tennessee. And for what purpose? To stand behind this semi-crazy president who's, picking fights with our allies and trying to help out our worst enemies. I think again, it's hard to see it now, but I think there's a way to get there and win back. Even if we get close to winning them back, we will change the way they talk to the president, the way they vote their vote in the House.
Thank you, Senator Hickenlooper. So, Attorney General Weiser, I was going to ask specifically about what Colorado is taking to implement protections for our immigrants, our LGBTQ, and other at-risk Coloradoans under this administration.
I appreciate this point. It's very much on my mind. I liked Senator Hickenlooper's reference. I think this is a reference from the New Testament. The least of us, was that your phrase?
The last and the least.
The last and the least. I would say the point is worth lifting up a little bit. Bullies and demagogues seek to make those with the least power a target for blame, for demonization, and to marginalize them. We cannot allow that to happen. We have to stand up for those who don't have a voice, for those who are afraid. And for those in the transgender community, I've got your back. And I want to say to all the families who I've had a chance to talk with and to providers, and I've heard Senator Hickenlooper say this, I hear you. I know this is about the lives of your kids, both the quality of life and the ability to live. And I've had friends say this to me, without gender affirming care, they would lose their child. And to imagine a parent to be told, you're going to have to risk your child dying by suicide because we're going to take away what your doctor who you trust and your family has chosen for life-saving healthcare is cruel. And that's why we went to court on that issue. And that's a victory that we won to protect those who are vulnerable. And we're not going to stop that. The next you mentioned is about immigrants. And I want to share that for me, this is personal, both hearing those who I know and care about, but also my family story. My mom and my grandparents came here as refugees. So America allowing refugees safe haven is not for me a just theoretical goal. It's why I'm here, is because that's who we are as a nation, e pluribus unum. And obviously this birthright citizenship case I mentioned is very important for us to win, as is a principle that I will give you the lawyerly word, due process of law. And here's what I just want to say about our immigration system. And I know Senator Hickenlooper is trying hard to get a rational immigration reform package through. And it is a travesty that it's been a political football, that there's been a failure of leadership on the Republican side to solve problems. And I know he can tell us about a senator from Oklahoma who tried and who was told, I'm sorry, it's more important that we play politics than we address public policy. The immigration system has 1.3 million people who've had their legal process completed and who are on a list of those who might be deported. And I was at a group, which was an immigration group, and they said, why wouldn't you just start with those individuals who have gone through the whole process? Maybe they had requested that they could have asylum and it was denied, or maybe their removal process had come to a close. Why would you threaten mass indiscriminate deportations based on what someone looks like or where they live and scare people at schools or churches or courthouses? And the answer that I unfortunately have to say is because they're not engaged in responsible governance. They're viewing this as performance, that there's some sport in this to scare people and to try to make people afraid. And that's not how we do things in the United States of America. We're a nation of laws. We believe in the fair and sensible treatment of immigrants. And if the federal government breaks the law and does this threatened mass roundup that's indiscriminate and denies people due process of law, then that will be another one of the lawsuits that we're going to have to pursue.
Thank you. Thank you, Attorney General. Would now like to bring on Robin. Robin?
Hi, yeah. What I want to do is I've been looking at the chat, and I know you guys have too, at the question and answer, just to pick a couple of questions that have been asked by our audience. The first one is from Jan Edwards, and she says, speaking of danger and damage, can you both address the SAVE Act? I see it as suppression of the vote and putting our elections and their credibility targeted. Thanks for being here and working for us. Senator, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure. The SAVE Act is, and I do get these acts all mixed up, so don't fire me out of hand. But the SAVE Act is one of the ones that we have to rely on, or the goal is to rely on to make sure that our elections are safe and fair. That I'm getting that right, am I? It's
the opposite. It's so sad how they label these laws. The SAVE Act actually would be a federal effort
right.
to undermine elections.
Yeah, it's the exact opposite of what any normal human being living in a democracy would want. And again, Phil, you probably know all the details better than I do. I'm not going to try and answer it in front of you.
You're free. I'm happy to phone a friend. I mean, basically, this is a effort to hijack and undermine states. The Constitution makes very plain states are the ones who run elections. And in Colorado, we found a way to run elections, including how we do vote by mail, how the will of the people is something that we take seriously. I went to the Supreme Court to argue in these cases personally, and the idea the federal government would try to undermine and disrupt our management of elections in a way that maximizes turnout is an affront to the Constitution. I've got serious, not just policy concerns, but legal concerns about this law. I was part of a state AG letter to oppose it. I hope there can be some of that respect for the rule of law in Congress, and there will be some ability to stop this. I will say one thing which is worth noting. This administration is not about government leaving more space for individuals to make their own decisions. This administration is seeking to tell us how to live our lives and taking discretion away from states. It is not a friendly administration to federalism in states, and this law will be another example.
And Phil, is this the one where they're going to require anyone registering to vote that they've got to have documentary proof of citizenship and either a passport or a birth certificate, some naturalization, something that demonstrates and proves, just to get registered to vote, that proves their identity? Is that this was that?
I'm trying to remember all the provisions. The ones I'm more familiar with are ones that would limit how people could vote. It could have an impact on, I think, voting by mail, if my memory serves me.
If I'm right, and again, this is not my strong suit, it has not passed the House, and it would have to. I guarantee you, when it came to the Senate, it would have to get through a filibuster, and I don't see one Democrat, and I think there 6 or 8 or 10 Republicans that would vote against it. So I will go back tonight, and I just remember it was draconian now that I've flipped it. And now I know which one's which. Anyway, I'll have to go back and study up tonight after we get off this call.
Okay, well, thank you. And I know that that was just off the list of questions, so you didn't really have time to prep for it. So yeah, that's
even if I prep for it, I still get those things mixed up. I'm embarrassed to admit, but anyway,
I'll join you anytime.
Okay. Another interesting thing, and I can't find some of the specific questions as I was kind of scrolling through, but people are wondering about, the possibility of not paying your federal taxes, because if they're not going to follow the law and they're not going to take the money that our elected representatives have designated to pay for the IRA and to pay for research and to pay for all the good stuff that has been voted, then they're asking, gosh, why are we paying taxes? Just a kind of an off the wall question. Wondered what your thoughts are on that.
You want me to go first, Phil, or you can go first? Either
No,
way.
take it.
You know, again, this is the rule of law that our country is, you know, almost 250 years old, and everyone agrees to certain things. And one of them is we pay taxes. And, you know, I can remember when I first opened the Wine Coop Brewing Company, and I you know, had to figure out all the taxes because businesses pay a whole bunch of taxes. I hated it. But it's what you pay to live in a free country and to have, you know, the transportation system, the national security, the defense, you know, the healthcare system, all this stuff. The government is what makes everything, all this stuff possible. So if people stop paying their taxes, you have total chaos. If you lose that rule of law, you know, Katie, bar the door. Everything's possible. But I don't think that's going to, you always get some isolated conspiracy nuts that are going to say, oh, I'm never going to pay taxes again. You know, in the old days, they'd hunt them down and give them a big fine. They'd end up having to pay the taxes, or they'd have to go spend some time in jail or something.
Let me pick this point up. It's going to be a critical point that we see a commitment to the rule of law, and that those who are enlisted to undermine it make a stand. So you may remember Eric Adams was being prosecuted, and they apparently had some sort of deal that they dropped the prosecution if he was willing to go along with their preferred policies in immigration. And I think 7 or more prosecutors quit before becoming a part of that. And if you haven't read some of those resignation letters, they're pretty powerful. That's where I believe we need to make stands on principle. If we who care about the rule of law say, screw it, we're just going to break the law too, then we're definitely on the road to losing our republic. And I don't want us to lose our republic. I want us to hold this republic together and then find a way forward that we can repair all that's been broken and maybe even come to a spirit of renewal. I believe we're going to be able to do that. But if we all give up on the whole project, we won't. By the way, I want to thank Amy, I think in the chat, mentioned something about the SAVE Act, reminded me one of the concerns. They do have something, John, about your identity. And one of the concerns is if your name as being presented is different than your original birth name, you're not allowed to vote, which would disenfranchise those who took a different name when they got married, which, as you know, is not uncommon. So it's a problematic law on multiple efforts, and it's worth, for those who are here, it's worth mentioning. We've got some Republican representatives in Adams County, in the Western Slope, who may need to hear from people about laws like the SAVE Act that are anti-federalism, anti-marriage in this respect, and just dumb and defy common sense. So please use your voice, find issues, find groups, please get engaged.
Thank you for that. And I'm just going to throw in, women kind of feel like it's anti-women too, because it disenfranchises women from voting. If they can't vote because their birth certificate does not match their driver's license name, they're turned away from the polls. It's a little teeny tiny thing, and women are talking about it. But now we'll just get it out there and get it out there a little bit more loudly.
I'll be an expert by the morning.
Thank you very much. I'm going to bring us back to Colorado a little bit. And that is about what's happening with the Department of the Interior. Okay. The Department of the Interior, which is responsible for the management of federal lands and natural resources, has seen significant budget cuts over the last month. This puts our public lands at increased risk for natural disasters such as wildfires and landslides, and threatens the closure of national parks. How do we fight these federal funding cuts?
Well, you want me to go first? I guess I'll always go first.
Yes.
As the older, not as the more powerful, but as the older, you know, and you can't help but recognize and I go right back to Donald Trump accusing public officials as responsible for the Los Angeles fires. I mean, it curdles your blood. Now he's dismantling if you look at it, he's dismantling the federal agencies that protect our public lands, that actually do all the work to try and prevent catastrophic wildfires, and when they take place, they minimize them. He's fired so far mean, he's fired over 25,000 public servants. I mean, public servants, people that aren't trying to get rich, they're trying to help other people. 4,000 are at either the Forest Service or the National Park Service. I mean, that's a lot of people. So a lot of these parks aren't going to be able to be open as much. People won't be able to get to show their kids Yellowstone Park, or, almost all parks will be affected. And even a lot of the camping in national forests, you should see, if you ever get a chance and you're just getting a cup of coffee at a diner somewhere and you're beside a Forest Service worker, ask them how big the area they cover, because they cover literally hundreds of square miles. And they're out there, on the outlook for wildfires, but also trying to make sure that the forests are healthy. And I think these reckless firings, again, more transparency. We're trying to look into exactly what is going to change in the hours in the different forests. You go up to a town like Estes Park, right at the foot of Rocky Mountain National Park there. And I remember when we had the big flood, and then they had the government shutdown right as they finally got their city cleared out. That's back when I was governor. And I actually called up the Secretary of the Interior. I said, I understand you're shut down. How much would it cost me to pay your employees so I could open the park? Because now all the leaves are turning, and Estes Park has just reopened their city, and they're going to get crushed. And actually, I will say that, I forget, she was from Seattle, Washington. She, I'll think of her name in a second, but we got it done in 12 hours. And so the state hired for 4 days the people to open those, make sure that the park was open and going. So I think as this continues, people are going to protest, they're going to call, they're going to email. No one supports these cuts. And I think, especially in a state like Colorado, but really all across the country, I've heard the same comments coming from one of the centers of the Dakotas. Everybody's got national parks. Everybody's got national forests, and people love them.
Here's what I'll say. Public lands and access to public lands are an 80-20 issue. And we need to provide focus. One of the hard parts, someone mentioned in the chat earlier, the so-called flooding the zone strategy. We need to make sure that we are highlighting, lifting up, and taking action on issues that really matter. And as we have a legal case on issues that matter, that we can win both in the courts of law and court of public opinion, we're going to bring it. When we have a policy case, we'll bring it to Senator Hickenlooper, Senator Bennett, others who can work hard leading the fight in Washington. There is a, like I said, real moment of truth for our republic. And I believe we're going to prevail because we have got, and Senator Hickenlooper mentioned this, the American people are on our side. They want us to protect public lands. They want to have access to national parks. So that's a winning issue. The American people want access to Social Security. They want veterans being taken care of. So we've got issues that we're going to be able to marshal. We're going to be able to put pressure, and the illegal, harmful actions of this administration are going to create a real opening for us to then start turning this around. And thank you all for being engaged, helping give us the ammunition, the tools, the ideas for us to go with. I know a lot of people are concerned. You should be. Please stay engaged. We need you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm looking at the time. We have 6 minutes. And so I've got a closing question, and then we have time for your closing remarks for now. So the last question is for both of you. The people on this call really appreciate that you are doing all you can to protect Coloradans, the country, and the rule of law. We have your backs and are looking every day for ways to fight, resist, and oppose what is happening with Trump and his anti-democratic regime. Senator Hickenlooper, in a recent New York Times op-ed, Adam Judelson writes that what we choose to fight on now will shape not just the 2026 midterms, but the 2028 presidential race as well, and cites Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security as being non-negotiables for Democrats. What does the Senate see as frontline issues that will propel a backlash movement away from Trump and earn Democrats another trifecta in 4 years? And how can we help bring this about today and over the next 44 months?
What a great question. I will try to be very concise. I could talk. I mean, we lost working class voters in November, and voters felt Democrats cared more about about social issues than about the economy and the kitchen table issues like housing and groceries, eggs. Now we got to switch the narrative. Trump promised he'd lower costs. He's doing the opposite. The budget resolution the Republicans put out there is going to gut the most popular safety net programs like Medicare and Medicaid to fund tax breaks for the ultra wealthy. That's not partisan. It's Americans who pay taxes for programs and don't want them cut. I think the Trump administration is hell-bent on raising costs. We're seeing that with the tariffs. Now the markets are falling. I mean, these are issues that Democrats, I mean, being able to afford your food and your shelter is something Democrats have always championed. Now we need to prove that to the American people. And I think our vision for the party's got to be that we're fighting for Americans. We're going to lower the cost of healthcare and prescription drugs. We're doing that. We're going to protect social safety net programs that people rely on and are paid for. We're going to lower the cost of living, groceries. You know, when they laid off all those scientists, they laid off 5 guys at the Ames laboratory in Iowa, which is where they do all the avian flu measuring of all the strains and how they're changing in various geographies. They laid off the guys that could help us get rid of the avian flu, which is the main cost of expensive eggs. I mean, lastly, I would just say also, I think the wealthy should pay their fair share, and they certainly don't in many ways. People don't want to live in uncertainty and chaos. And I think the Republicans are their own worst enemy here. They're seeing a widespread backlash against Trump's harmful policies. And I think we just have to return to being the champion of working people. And I think that's how we take back Congress, and ultimately we'll take back the White House.
Attorney General, do you have anything to add?
I do, and I will say we need to realize we're in a longer term effort. The hole that we're in, and I liked very much that Senator Hickenlooper talked about states that used to have Democratic senators or don't anymore. That's true about congressional districts. It's true about state attorney general positions. It's very important that we understand what Americans are concerned about. We listen hard and we show that we are concerned, we're on the case, and we're getting things for the American people. Delivering healthcare for the American people was a winning issue in 2018. It's going to be again. These attacks on Medicaid and Medicare are going to underscore that we're delivering what people are concerned about. The tax on Social Security, on veterans benefits, on national parks. Part of what we can do in this moment is find clarity through these very dark, difficult times, find a path to repair all the damage, and then renew for us as a society what type of social contract we have to one another. And the idea that this administration is going to be all about destroying government programs that people rely on and need and giving tax breaks to those who don't need them is a losing issue. We're going to prevail on this, and we're going to stay in this work. And what's so hard is how much damage is being done and people are being harmed. We need your help, both calling out the injustices, pointing out the wrongs, and then using our collective voices, making sure that we, the people's voice, is heard, and that we build the movement that we, America, we, Colorado, need and deserves.
Right. Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Christine.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm looking at the clock, and I know that we're short on time. I hope you don't mind going over a few minutes because we would love to hear your closing remarks. Attorney General Weiser, can we start with you?
I am happy to. Senator Hickenlooper may be an elder, but I'm the wiser one of the two. Sorry, couldn't resist. And what I just want to note is Americans have seen dark times before. This is a dark time. And there's a line from one of my favorite books, Lord of the Rings, where Frodo says to Gandalf, "I wish I was not living in such a dark time." And Gandalf says, "So do all who live to see such times." But that's not for them to decide. All for us to decide is how we use the time we have. We all have a choice right now. Are we going to give up, or are we going to lean in? Are we going to be quiet, or are we going to use our voice? Are we going to be part of being on the sidelines, or are we going to lean in and be part of the solution? Everyone here is leaning in. You're engaging in this great democratic republic. You're making sure you can be a part of how together we build a better future. That's what America's about. That's what brought my family here. We cannot forget that. There's a lot of work ahead. We're going to be in this work, and we in Colorado are going to be a beacon for our nation. Thank you all. It's an honor to serve you.
Thank you. And Senator Hickenlooper.
Well, first, thank you to the thousands of Coloradans who joined us tonight. I know you're all busy. I know what it's like to be busy. I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you to Indivisible for being the catnip that attracted everybody, gets people engaged and excited. You're already on the front lines of this fight. And as I said, we're getting thousands of calls. We're hearing from constituents in person and emails. We want that pressure, especially with all these Republicans supporting Trump's, the administration's crazy policies. So disrupt business as usual, show up at town halls, make your voices heard. I think this backlash from voters at Republican town halls is just beginning. It's not just in purple states. It's going to be in red states. It's everywhere. Also, Timothy Snyder wrote a great little teeny thin book on tyranny. And it talks about, this is a playbook from demagogues, right? This is classic. All the stuff you attack your political opponents, eliminate them. You attack and lie in the media, get rid of the media. Then you start going after civil society, hospitals, schools, universities. This is all 101 for the demagogue. One thing Timothy Snyder says is pick the little opportunities to be nice to a stranger, to rebuild those bonds of civil relationships to people you don't even know. I would encourage you to people to volunteer in their communities, get involved with advocacy organizations. The most vulnerable are the ones who are going to be hurt the most from Trump's crazy policies. And we can volunteer at homeless shelters or food pantries, our local schools, help our local leaders, community leaders to get through these, as Phil Weiser says, these dark, dark times. So we got local elections in 2028. We've got local elections in 2026. Let's get involved. You guys show the strength all the way up and down to the ballot. And again, thank you all for being here. You give all of us a sense of purpose and strength.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Attorney General. Robin, do you want to lead us out?
Sure. I'm going to wrap it up real quick because I know we're at time. So during this call, a number of resources have been referenced, and we promise we are going to send those to anybody who registered for this call over email. So just watch for that. I also just want to tag on to Senator Hickenlooper's comment about elections coming up. 2025, we're going to have school board elections. So we're going to have a chance for that too. Anyway, so we just want to say a huge thank you for Senator Hickenlooper and Attorney General Weiser for making the time to come and speak with us tonight. And we hope this is a continuing dialogue. Let's work together to turn this thing around. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Really a pleasure.
Thank you.